Hey everyone, welcome to Damn Fine TV. I'm one of your hosts, Jay.
And I'm Mel's. And in honor of Friday the 13th, we're releasing some of our reviews that were previously only for patrons.
Yes, so today from the Damn Fine TV Patreon vault, we are bringing you coverage of X. So we hope you enjoy and remember, do not accept a life you do not deserve.
Wise words. Enjoy.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously we both love it. I hope everybody has watched it. Go and watch it if you haven't. We're not really going to go through scene by scene. You guys know that's kind of not our deal. So, what makes it your favorite movie from the year?
I mean, I love the way, okay, I love the cinematography. I love the story. I love the twist. I love the cast, like the actors. I love the plot. I don't know if I just said that, but I mean, like, this gave me everything I wanted with it not being like a gory slasher, because I think everyone
Mm,
knows by now that like
yeah.
my go-to is I'm really drawn into like slashers and things like that. Now there was obviously gore, but that wasn't the point of the story. I love the way it challenged the way I thought. Like it really got the brain gears going on, all right, what are the themes of this? And I'm sure we'll get into, that in just a little bit here. But yeah, it wasn't just a mindless, like, okay, controversial yet brave. Was not a fan of the latest Texas Chainsaw Massacre that was on
Oh, I don't
Netflix.
think that is controversial.
I know, I
Maybe
know,
it's brave. I don't know, but
I know people
it's
liked it,
trash.
but I was really going into it hoping that they had done something where I had to put my thinking cap on, kind of like how the old 70s Texas Chainsaw kind of like
Yes.
revolutionized a lot of things. And
Yes.
I was very disappointed, but this gave me like what I had hoped for Texas Chainsaw Massacre, if that makes sense. So it's just,
Mm-hmm.
and it's also so good because it does keep you thinking about it. Like I'll just randomly think about scenes from the movie, or like, oh my gosh, what what does this mean? The one of the biggest things in the end, like who we find out who Maxine's like dad is, and I'm just like, oh, what is this like? What is this backstory for Maxine? I mean, the next one in the series I think is going to focus around Pearl. But I mean, like, I'd love
Mm-hmm.
to have another story of like Maxine and like what,
Yeah.
tell me about her. Like, and that's what I love about it, because out the gate, you don't expect Maxine to be like your Cindy Prescott or whatever, right? Like I did not see that coming for personally, and I loved it. So it was good.
Same. I
It
mean,
was good.
I think to say the least, right?
Yeah.
It was good. Yeah. I love that comment because I think going into it not really knowing anything, I kind of assumed Jenna Ortega would be
All
our
right.
final girl.
Yes.
Um
Same.
and then even as we got into it, I was like, "Oh yeah, she's the quiet, non-sexual one. Of course she's going to be our final girl." But no, that this film is not doing what you think it's going to do, and it's taking those old horror conventions and totally flipping them on their head and giving you something different. And I totally agree that it is something I have not stopped thinking about since the first time I watched it. And it comes up for me a lot. Like even I know this might seem weird, but when Roe v. Wade was struck down, and I was trying to have some more positive thoughts, I was thinking about like the amazing characters and storylines around the themes of like sex and agency and autonomy that is in this film, and just thinking like there are people out there that are better and that want better for us. And so I mean, even with like real heavy real life shit, it was coming up for me. And
Yeah.
I have not stopped thinking about it. But I like from the opening shot, I was hooked. I
Same.
mean, that opening sequence where you kind of think for a second, okay, is it going to be in this different aspect ratio? We're going to have the bars on the side. And then as we move out of the barn, you're like, oh, okay, this is awesome. We're just like getting that perspective. And it gave you, or at least it gave me, a sense of place and a sense of time immediately. Like I was just into the vibe almost immediately. And then when you see the cop cars and how the cops are dressed, you know you're back in a different time. Because again, like I didn't know anything about this going into it. So I didn't even know we were in 79. I had no clue it was about making a porn. Like
Right.
everything was such a surprise for me. And I was really happy to have it that way. But uh yeah, I mean, and what do you think about that opening sequence? Like knowing, well, no, we don't know everything, but we're almost given a taste of what's to come without giving too much away. Like we kind of see a little bit of the body count. We know there's something crazy in the basement.
Yep.
There's something that really works about it for me that I think doesn't work in everything that I see it utilized in.
Yeah.
Sometimes maybe it just goes too far, gives too much away.
Yeah. I mean, for sure. And I really like that it started at the end and went back, if you want to say that's
Yeah.
how it was done.
Yeah.
It and okay, initially but just like what you just said, I was very cautious because I was like, wait a minute. Because most of the films I've seen that have started off like at the end and then kind of rewound, and told the story up to that. Like you just said, I've always thought, well, what's the surprise here? Because you got a house full of dead, like bodies. Like, what's the surprise going to be? And once I got past that and moved through like the beginning of the film, I was like, actually, I don't know if I do know what's going to go down here. And so it made me appreciate that opening scene because I also love like kind of leaving. I love the way that it left the way that it came in. Like it was really, and all of the stuff that happened in the middle, you know what I mean? Like it gave the
Yeah.
ending, which is what you kind of saw in the beginning, it gave it like a fresh feel, even though I knew, pardon me, I knew that's how it was going to end up. So,
Yes. But it's like there's enough there to kind of like wet your whistle for the movie,
sure.
but not like fully satiate any kind of thirst or anything. Like,
Yeah,
okay,
for
there's
sure.
some dead bodies, but you're getting into a horror movie. And I also really love the way that it sets up this preacher that we're going to keep seeing that's on the television, and yet we have no understanding of how that fits in. And in fact, the first time through, I was like, oh, it's going to be a lot about satanic panic, maybe. And I think that theme is there in the background, but I don't know that it's as prominent as I thought it might be in the beginning.
Yeah. I see. Yeah.
Sorry for all that dog collar shaking. Bailey, come here.
Oh,
I'm just gonna take her collar off.
oh, that's okay. I didn't even hear it. So, no,
Bailey.
you're right. And also, I did. I don't know if I thought so much like satanic panic, more as like punishing, punishing people for making adult films or like whatever it is. You know what I mean? Where there's some sort of
Sure.
like it's
Yes.
laced in like, oh, a big Christianity and like this is the belief and yada yada yada. And it turns out to be not, nothing of the sort. And but that's a great, I mean, I hate to use the word fake out, but that's a great fake out that I really enjoyed about the film too. That even though we find out, I guess spoilers, we know it's happening, but that's actually Maxine's dad, right? But like,
Mm-hmm.
and his message or like all this is kind of like all over the small rural Texas town, which you would be like, okay, and you're starting to put things together, like, oh, this is exactly where you would see like religious nuts or whatever you want to call it. I loved that the fake out that uh Pearl and, oh my gosh, his name is escaping me now. Not
I think it's
Harold.
Howard.
Howard. Yes,
Howard.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Pearl and Howard, that's not even like what that was just like on their TV at that time or whatever. So,
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah. But I think it helps sets the tone again for the time and place that we
exactly.
are in, the universe that's being presented to us, the kind of societal norms or ideal,
Yes.
maybe not even norms, but things that are within the culture, right?
Mhm.
And it's just helping build all of that. So it like, yeah, it just really sets you in that time and place. And I think it is like, just to use your term fake out, I think it really, I think there's that. And I think there's maybe just our preconceived notions about who the villains in horror movies can be. But like Pearl never once crossed my mind.
No.
Maybe Howard, because we first meet him holding a shotgun.
True.
But the fact that the murderer turns out to be Pearl, I'm almost like disappointed in myself for not even considering it could be her.
Yeah.
And that totally goes into you said at the top that it really challenged the way that you were thinking. I love what this did to me, and like in the same way challenging my feelings around aging,
Yeah.
my, again, preconceived notions about aging. And I had to like really reflect on that and be like, yeah, I think you would probably be a lot like Bobby Lynn, thinking you're being really nice,
Mhm.
but actually being quite ageist and like
Right.
not even really thinking about what you're saying to this person who's still a human being,
Yeah.
even if she's older. I love the way that it messes with my brain of like, I really feel for Pearl and even a little bit Howard, but I really, really feel for Pearl, and she's a fucking monster at the same
I
time.
know. I know. I love
It's
it.
so well done.
Yes. Yeah, 100%. Yes. Yeah.
But before we get into some
Oh,
more
I'm
meaty
sorry.
themes,
To go on what you just said, it really humanizes, and that's what I really liked about it, because I can't tell you how many true crime docs or are infamous like true crime like killers that we've had, in our time or whatever, that I've just like read a lot of books on and like watched these documentaries on. There's something very human about them, but they're monsters. But you
mm-hmm.
still can't help but have like it, it's just very it's an odd thing, and
Complex.
it's very
Yeah.
complex. And I I think maybe that's why I've never been picked for a jury. I've only been called once, but like I it's very hard for me to see black and white. I acknowledge the horrible things that people can do, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
always searching for and trying to understand like the human part of like how they got to where they're at. And they did a really good
Yeah.
job with Pearl. I felt like they just humanized her very well. So like when you find out that she is the perpetrator, like she is the villain of this, it really takes you back, because I mean, not only is she older, right? We've talked about that. She's a female. I mean, I'm gonna be honest, the last time I saw something like that was like when Friday the 13th, when it was Jason's mom, but you never
Right.
saw Jason's mom doing anything.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So they just did such a great job
And
of humanizing this character.
and I mean, even in that case, to bring it down to a simple fact of age, Jason's mom is still younger than
Oh,
Pearl.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, Pearl is frail and fucking brittle and old. Like that is just the fact of the matter.
Yeah,
She
I
is an
know.
older lady.
I
But I
know.
mean, I guess she's got that dancer strength.
She got something. Yeah, she got something.
Um, yeah, okay, so just some more like kind of overall stuff. As I've said, this movie has really stuck with me. On a little bit of a superficial level, I think it had an incredible impact on my summer because I saw it at the beginning of the summer and I was like, well, I have three goals. I need shorteralls, I need blue eyeshadow, and I need to only listen to 70s jams all summer long. And I did all three, and I just gotta say I'm living my best life in all three of those things.
I
Okay.
love it. I love this journey for you.
I mean, like the soundtrack is so good. I mean, every single song that they chose works so well. I know it's not all 70s music, but um all stuff that would have been out at that time anyway. And I mean, the first jam that we hear in the summertime as they're leaving the strip club, basically, and we get that amazing piece of foreshadowing with the picture of the alligator like biting the clothes off the like blonde girl that is essentially Bobby Lynn. That kicks things off so nicely.
Mm-hmm.
Don't Fear the Reaper, used in the absolute perfect spot.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me is just like that is a dream that you have when you're a filmmaker of like, wouldn't it be so cool to film a murder scene to Don't Fear the Reaper and just have it be like lit with this red lighting? I think it's so cool. And then of course Landslide.
Yes.
I mean, the thing is, this movie is also really sad, and that's one of the saddest moments I think in the movie is as we're watching Pearl kind of take her makeup off and stuff. Like, whew.
I know.
But killer soundtrack, so much fun to listen to.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's got a whole vibe. Like you were already saying, you'd love to see something more with Maxine and get to know more about her and her connection. You know, like how did she leave the church and all of that. But I hope we do get that sequel, and I hope we get some flashbacks to Bobby Lynn and Wayne and Jackson. I mean, I just want more time with these characters.
Yes.
By the time we get around to their actual murders, they all go so quick.
Yeah.
I mean, even RJ, like she just continues stabbing him, but he's already dead. Like, you know what I mean? Like we just lose these people so quickly. And I want to spend more time with them. I want to spend more time in this world. Watching it 3 times, like I could watch it another 3 times, still not be sick of it another 3 times. It just has such a sense of atmosphere. I don't know. It's kind of like Twin Peaks in that way. I mean, it's not presenting the same vibe in any way, shape, or form, but it captures that kind of thing really, really well.
I agree. Yeah.
Like it feels like summer when you watch it.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
And it feels hot. It feels sticky. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, I mean, like the costuming or, you know, the fashion, everything is just so, it would be rural Texas in the summer. I just can't say enough about all the choices for this. And I also want to say Tyler Bates is one of the composers of like the musical score for this.
Yeah.
And I enjoy his work, but I really enjoyed his work with Rob Zombie's Halloween, and he kind of redid the Halloween theme. And I actually prefer his Halloween theme over like the original one, but he's a very as far as musical scores go, and it wasn't he had a partner. It's not just Tyler Bates, but as soon as I saw like musical composition like Tyler, I was like, okay, now I know why like I'm so into like how I can tell in Watchmen, you know, that it was Atticus Rose and Trent Reznor that did the score for that. I was like, I'm into it. I can just tell, you know, their work. So yes.
I think it was also Chelsea Wolfe. Not that I know any work by her, but her name has just stuck with me because it's such a unique, beautiful name. Yeah. This, and I should say, like, the score is absolutely also beautiful. I was more drawn to the soundtrack just for like all the pop bangers, you know, but like the score itself is so gorgeous. And I love this choice of, you know, with apart from like the opening sequence, you wouldn't really know that this is a horror movie until we get to Pearl and Howard's place.
Yeah.
Like everything's kind of light, breezy. It feels more like a drama. Okay, these people are off to make a porn film, whatever. But then once we arrive and the score actually does kick in, we start getting those ominous like musical beats or stings or whatever. We get those like long from shots from super far away. But I like that side of things kicks in at the place where all of that action is actually going to go down.
Yes, 100%. Well, and that's another thing. Like, I mean, I don't mean this in any negative way, but the simplicity of it as well. Meaning we didn't have to go all over town. I mean, like everything happens in a very specific time set, right? In a very specific location. And I guess that's why it makes me feel very, it had a great ode to 70s horror, but a very modernized, great like twist or kick to it or add to it. because original Texas Chainsaw, I mean, like original Halloween, like when you think about these mid to late 70s, you know, horror movies, it had that vibe of like you're just in one specific spot for one set amount of time. It's not overly complicated. There's not a lot of set changes and things like that. And it just, I think that helps you focus in on like the story that's being told to you. So yeah, I really liked that as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. It makes things feel really isolated in
Yes.
a perfectly creepy way, you
Yep.
know? And of course, they did the classic, like, stop at the roadside kind of gas station that has
Yeah.
the few amenities that you need. They're in the van that is so similar to the Texas Chainsaw van. I mean, the whole lead up to getting to that farm was incredible. It was like dripping with
Oh
Texas
yeah.
Chainsaw, but I was so here for it. And you're right, it's not like a hokey ripoff. It's very much its
Mm-mm.
own thing. It's just really paying homage to stuff that came from that time.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's what makes it one of the reasons why it's so great to me is because it's not a cheap knockoff of it. It's a really great like just love letter
Yes.
to that era where we have a lot of underrated like horror movies that have the same, you know, uh set or like specifications as this, right? They're quote unquote simple, but like that's the beauty of it is because
Yes.
it it kind of contains your suspense and your horror to you don't get a chance to breathe. Like your main characters aren't like running to another part of town where they're safe for like 20 minutes. You know what I mean? Like it's just builds the suspense and everything because it
Yes.
localizes it to one thing and you're like, oh shit, they're not gonna get out of here. You know what I mean? Like
And that's all it does for like the first 45 minutes is just
yes.
build that tension and build that suspense, build that anticipation
Mm-hmm.
because I mean, yeah, it's like 45 or 50 minutes in by the time RJ gets got. And
Right.
that's the first kill. But it's not even noticeable. The only reason I know now is because it's my third watch and I actually paused just to see, okay, how long until that first kill. But the story is so captivating up until then that it's
You
like
don't even realize
I
it's been
like
that long.
watching
Yeah.
it today, I was like, I don't even care if anyone dies. Like I'm just enjoying this movie so much. Like
Yeah.
it's just a good story and it's interesting characters. It's a cool dynamic between everybody. Like, I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
good. So
And
good.
I mean, it's a visual feast, like all the choices for whether it's, I mean, Maxine. I think this is my favorite sequence is Maxine swimming in the water. I mean, just the pull away when she first arrives at the water and you just see the landscape around her is just like breathtaking.
Mhm.
Then her laying, tits up in the water.
Yeah.
And we're going back and forth between her and the sex scene between Bobby Lynn and Jackson. And then the alligator, which I absolutely love the choice for her to not notice and for all of the intensity and suspense to lie with us.
Right.
She doesn't know, she doesn't care. She is acting as she would, and yet she gets away. And I mean, the payoff with the alligator later is just like so superb.
Yes. Yeah.
But that whole shot, like the shot from above, as we're just watching it get closer and closer, and somehow she gets away. I mean, it's just all so delicious.
Hmm. I
It's
agree.
so nicely filmed. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then throughout, I mean, the transitions, the way we get those like three flashes of things. So
Hmm.
right from the beginning, like there's one with Maxine, like the line of cocaine that she's getting ready to snort or whatever. We do it with the cows, Maxine in the lake. There's the record player, the preacher on TV. And then even at one point, it's not the like three flashes kind of transition, but there's just like a black bar that goes across the screen, which is so old. Like that is such an old style. I mean, I feel like they were still using it in like the 90s and stuff, but
Hmm.
I was just like, this is a choice.
Yes.
I'm super here for it. I mean, I think one of the overarching things about this movie is it's definitely about filmmaking,
Right.
right? I mean, it's right there in them going to make this porn. But I think all of these different choices and all of these different types of shots and cinematography and stuff, it's like it's also a love letter to filmmaking, I
Yeah,
think.
I agree. I agree.
What else? Any kind of more overall? Oh, we've talked about like the references to like Texas Chainsaw. I also feel like Lorraine using the axe on the door was very The Shining.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I know she's not the sinister party in this situation, but still just like a face coming through
Uh-huh.
a hole in the door. And then I also thought it was a little reminiscent of Scream, just in the fact that it was self-referential and a little bit meta. Like when RJ talks about, well, you can't change the movie halfway through. And I
Right.
kind of feel like this movie changes halfway through,
Uh-huh.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And then even just like the idea of it being about filmmaking
Yeah,
felt
for
kind of
sure.
screamish, but yeah.
Yeah.
Would you classify this as a slasher?
I mean,
Because like what else could
I
it
don't
be? It's not a
know.
typical slasher, right? Like,
No, it's not a typical one. Maybe this is very hard because okay, not to keep going back to this, but even when you're in the 70s, so like the gory slasher thing didn't, I don't think it really took off until we got like Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street, and then we started getting I mean Hellraiser, I don't really consider that a slasher, it's something different, but anyways, and you get into Scream, and I know what you did last time, whatever. But if you look at like the original Halloween, the very first one, and then like Texas Chainsaw, oh gosh, but those films, there's actually, the body count is actually not that
right.
big. It's more like a
Yeah.
psychological, like tormenting thriller, and yeah, there are some deaths in it, and this one is obviously more gory than well, at least more gory than Halloween. I still think Texas Chainsaw, the original one, it's got some really great gore moments in it.
Yeah,
But
for sure.
so I just, it would be hard for me to call it a slasher more than like maybe just a psychological like thriller.
Yeah.
But I don't know what quantifies a slasher. Is it like so many people have to be killed, or is it the way that people are killed? Like, do we have to, you know, karate chop somebody's head off? I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, but
Yeah.
when I think of slasher, I think of something very specific, and I just wouldn't put that in this category.
It's
So
like slasher light. Like it has
sure,
bits
yeah,
and pieces of a slasher. But I mean, again, to take it back to the original Texas Chainsaw, like that movie has a lot of buildup. I mean, shit
absolutely
does not go down until like the last 20 minutes. And then it is a pretty big bloodbath. And
right. Yeah,
I mean, there's some good gore in this, but as you've already said as well, like it's not the goriest
no,
by any means.
no,
So, although Pearl's death is pretty darn gory, but that's like the last thing that happens.
very
So,
last thing, yeah. And I
yeah.
mean, it was a little much for me. I was like, Pearl? No, no, I don't know. Like for some reason,
Tell
like
the
they were
arch
just gonna,
secret.
yeah, she was just gonna leave her to, you just live out the rest of your days as a, now that you don't have Howard around. I don't know what I was thinking, but I was like,
Like,
oh, Pearl.
but also, what did she think? Like, oh, my hip, help me.
Uh,
It's like, bitch, why do you think somebody's gonna help you now? Like, you just murdered all this girl's friends.
you barking up the
She's not
wrong tree,
coming for
ma'am.
you.
You barking up the wrong tree, ma'am. Yeah.
Well, okay, so while we're on the topic of kills and gore, do you have a favorite kill?
Well, you alluded to it. I mean, I really enjoyed them all, but I don't mean to laugh, but I really was into the alligator with Bobby Lynn. It
Yeah.
is Bobby Lynn, right? Yeah, I keep wanting to call
Yes.
her Brittany,
Yeah.
but yeah, Bobby
Yeah.
Lynn. I don't know. I just, there's something about an animal, like a death by animal or whatever,
Yeah.
that it's just like, I don't know, but it was so fitting. But see, that's, maybe this is what I'm thinking of, because I grew up like not in swamplands or anything like that, but like, I mean, we had water moccasins in the lake, and we had, I mean, so like I was
Ah,
a water moccasin.
Yeah.
God, a lake
Sounds like
snake?
you're talking about a shoe that's in the water.
No, girl, these things are so deadly and they will chase you in the water. They're snakes.
Mm-mm.
Yes. I grew up in the deep south, and I'm telling you, like
That's terrifying.
we would be in the lake and you would see its little head pop up and they're fast as fuck. Yeah. Yeah, and they're highly poisonous.
And what, they're poisonous? Oh my
you could
God.
Yeah, so water moccasins, and they also like they're always around water, but they blend in like with leaves and shit, so you could step on one, boot the end of you.
Fuck me.
So
Oh my God.
I've always been scared of like little creatures, quote unquote, but like alligators, crocodiles, like water moccasins. I don't know. Like, don't get me started on Anaconda. I could not watch that film because
I don't want none.
was fucking terrified. And I know I'll
like
never
shit
come
like
across
that.
an anaconda in my life. But anyway, so there's something that for me personally, I think that's really scary about that kind of death. Like if I were to die,
Yeah.
just shoot me or stab me in the head or whatever, cut my head off.
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
But I do not want an animal to kill.
It is an especially brutal way to go.
Yes.
And like they didn't even like, I think that kill could have been gorier in another movie, but like it didn't even need to be, because the way they built it up, what we got, like, I mean, I already said it, but it was such a good payoff.
Yes.
The way that it kept like subverting our expectations of what was going to happen with this alligator, because, you know, we see it with Maxine, then we even see it with Jackson when he finds the abandoned car in the water. It's right next to it. And then, I mean, it's even funny the way that you think Bobby Lynn is about to call Pearl a bitch, and she just knocks this chick off the dock and then calls her a bitch, and then she gets eaten by the gator.
Yes.
Yeah.
Full
and
circle.
Just like from the foreshadowing up front, it's just so delicious. It's so good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the one that scared me. You know, I actually found all the deaths to be really satisfying. And I know that sounds very weird to say, but none of them felt cheap. None of them felt like, oh, we're going to have to kill all the characters off. So, okay, this was going to have to die this way. No, like they all felt very genuine, like, and they were all pretty suspenseful. Like it wasn't just like, to use Scream as an example, I mean, it wasn't just like, you know, oops, Tatum got stuck in the garage door or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, not to cheapen her death, but I'm just saying, like, it didn't feel like killing because we need to get the body count up. It was like very well thought out, like deaths for these characters. And so
I enjoyed all of them as well. Like, there's the shock with RJ that holy shit, Pearl just killed a dude. Like, what the fuck? And also at that point, I don't even think she's Pearl. She's just the old woman that lives in this creepy, dirty, dingy house. Oh my God, she just murdered this dude. Like, what is going on? And now she's like really murdering this dude. Also, that's great foreshadowing too, when they're driving there and there's the cow that got run over and there's all the blood and guts like in the headlight. And then we see that again with RJ, which I thought was like, I mean, to call it beautiful makes me crazy, but I think you know what I mean. Like,
there's a through line through it or whatever.
Yes, it's a really beautiful choice for filmmaking, right? But and then, I mean, even again, like they all go so quickly too. Like it feels sad to me. And I mean, it's not like we know a whole lot about these people, but I'm genuinely sad to lose each one of them, maybe with the exception of RJ. Like, he's clearly the least progressive one of the bunch. So I like him the least.
Yeah.
For sure. But I think Bobby Lynn would probably also be my favorite, with Lorraine being a close second, because the way that this girl is like, I hate all of you, and runs out the door and gets blown the fuck out the door.
I was not expecting that. So like, that's a good shock value there on her death. And I guess, you know, now that I'm really thinking about them, not that I was like shedding tears over it, but for some reason I really felt the worst for Jackson. And I couldn't tell you why. I don't know if it's because he was like lured out under the guise of like helping, and like it pretty genuine dude. Like, I love Kid Cudi. I'm like, more booty from Cudi, more Cudi booty.
He was fantastic.
And he was amazing in this.
Yeah.
And so maybe I just had an affinity for the character, but I did. I was like, shit. Like when because he got shot, right? Like that's who Harold shot.
Yeah.
Or Howard. I keep calling him Howard. I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
That's
We
who
know what you
Howard.
mean.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I guess I was just really like, well, damn, Howard, what are you doing?
Yeah. All
Yeah.
of them felt that way to me, but I know what you mean. There was something like there was an extra sting with Jackson for some reason.
Yeah.
Maybe it is because he was, like you said, like he went out there to do kind of his citizenly duty of helping this older man. And but even, you know, like I don't know if you want to get into some of these themes now, like we could
Yeah,
start
sure.
digging more into the whole aging aspect of it. But I mean, even these people, and I'm thinking, you know, I think we see it actually we see it with all of them, maybe with RJ and Lorraine being the exception, but even this group of people that is so progressive when it comes to sexuality, race, agency, bodies, like all
Yeah.
that kind of stuff, even they don't see how they're being very ageist.
Right.
I think that they have the best of intentions. Like I said, you know, the scene with Bobby Lynn and Pearl on the dock, she's genuinely trying to help. She puts her little shawl around Pearl, and you know, Jackson's trying to help Howard find his
Yes.
wife, but keeps calling him Pops. And like, you know, Bobby Lynn kind of talks to Pearl in a way of like she doesn't understand anything that's going on, when it's like, bitch, like she just killed a lot of your friends and she's like
Right.
masterminding this whole fucking thing. So it was, and I like that too, the complexity of that, in like, we can love these characters for so many reasons, and yet they still have that flaw that ended up getting them into some trouble, I think, maybe quicker than it might have happened. Like if they hadn't have underestimated Pearl and Howard, would things have been different?
And you know, here comes my little spiel about being like humanizing, because I think that flaw is inherently in all of us. So I think that's what makes it so much richer in these themes. Like, okay, all right, not even just shoot like an adult video, but I mean, like, I guess in today's time and like RIL, right? Like we're conditioned, I think, now to really have a boundary and like walls up. I feel like things are different. And you hear this a lot, like back when I was younger. But I mean, you just, I guess as you age and you see things and things happen in the world, like you have a more realistic point on it. But what I'm rambling at to get at is, I don't know if I would think twice if I had like an older neighbor and I needed to go borrow something. I mean, that older neighbor could very well be a serial killer, but there's just that, you know, and I'm calling it like the inherent flaw, but it's just that thing in all of us where we're like, they have to be harmless because they're a little bit older or whatever. And I think the same can be said like for, I mean, like killer kids too. I mean, I don't know, but I'm just saying like, there's ages like very young and much older to where your guard is down, like I think in a normal human way, and you don't think about it. And I think that's why it makes like, that's what makes this movie so fantastic, because
it's these biases that we have for whatever reason. It is very much culturally driven and societally driven, because I know that we can look to, you know, there's some societies in Japan where the older you get, the more revered and respected you become. And like, you're not just, I mean, I don't want to say everybody that goes to a retirement home or a nursing home has been ditched, but it is a pretty common narrative that like, we don't really want to deal with our old people, so we give them to people that are paid to deal with them, right? Whereas in other societies, it's completely different. And a lot of people, like in a lot of those places, you know, you keep working, not the same way that you would when you were 30 or 40 even, but you still have a type of purpose in your society. Whereas here, I think a lot of the times we see older people as not really having much more of a purpose, and how dehumanizing that must be.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just like that is such a sad but fucking real
Very
part
true.
of this
Uh-huh.
movie.
Yeah.
And I think it's why we don't consider that Pearl and Howard are going to be the people, and especially Pearl, because I think there is something specifically about older women that we see as
Yes.
just being helpless.
Or like grandmotherly, right? I mean, like,
Sure.
not everybody, of course. Sure. I mean, I guess I'm speaking personally because I'm sure there are a lot of people that don't have relationships with their grandparents. But I mean, like,
Right.
yeah, I think about my grandparents and they were older, you know, and it's like, yeah, like I just then started thinking of all like like older ladies as like the grandmotherly type, and that's not very much not true. You know,
No,
so
and I mean, like, you know, if you were a terrible fucking person at the age of 45, you're probably still a terrible person at 90.
100%.
Like, just because you are over a certain age and, you know, can no longer do some of the activities that you used to do doesn't mean that you're all of a sudden super nice and going to make me some lovely cookies or something. Like,
Listen, I have aunts. I've talked about my aunts before. They're all in their, like, my dad is 72, 71. Excuse me. He's 71. He's the baby of the family. So all of my aunts are
right.
like 70s
Yeah.
and 80s. Are they like throwing each other over balconies and breaking legs nowadays? No, but they're still assholes. So, I mean, you know what I
Right.
mean? Like,
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
still mean. So
It's this weird thing that we do, that we like reduce older people to shells of their former selves, when
yeah.
in fact, like, they've actually gained more. They've lived longer, they've seen more, they've done more, they've gained more experience. They're actually more than they ever were.
Yeah.
But for some reason, we have decided that it works backwards. And
Yeah.
I mean, like, I understand, yes, the aging process does unfortunately rob us of certain things, and we aren't the same. But like, we still have souls and we still have dreams and even goals. And it's just, I think we said this maybe on the weekly watch episode, the second one, this idea, and I know we talked about it with Ken Sledge on Sledgehammer Horror, but the idea that horror has always been willing to go to places that other movies won't go. And I don't know that I would have ever explored aging in this way had it not been for the lens of a horror film. Like,
Right.
that just made it so much more interesting and relevant and like in my face for me.
Yeah. Oh, I get
And
it.
I love
Yeah.
that it's actually a movie that has challenged my perception and my outlook on that kind of thing.
For sure. Yeah. No, I mean,
And
you're
I love
right.
that I can think about this and feel a certain sense of sympathy for Pearl and still fucking think you're horrible.
Yeah.
You're a terrible person. I mean, look at the man that is hung up in their basement. That man has clearly been severely
Tortured.
sexually assaulted
Yeah.
and tortured.
Yeah.
And that is horrid.
Mm-hmm.
Terrifying.
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. But you're going over there to borrow a cup of sugar and they got somebody, you know, down in their basement that they tormented to death. And you're just like, oh, they're not going to do anything to me because they're so old, you know, like that's,
what could they possibly do? Yeah.
So, yeah. Yeah. I love the way that you just said, though, like it kind of makes you think about, because like, okay, as you get closer, I think with every like decade birthday, right? So like I'm getting closer to 40. I start thinking about like, and I was thinking about this the other day, like it's been 20 years since I met Scott, right? So I mean, like, and I'm thinking, golly, it's 20 years ago, but I still had the same. I mean, I've grown, matured. A lot of things have happened in the last 20 years, but I mean, like I still have my same likes. I still like am this person. So then you start fast forwarding though. So like when I'm 50, when I'm 60, like, you know, hopefully I get to see these ages, but you know, it's just like, you're still going to be who you are. And even if that's a murderous person on the inside, you're still a person.
Right. Yeah. Like, why yes, it changes our physical bodies, and unfortunately sometimes we also have a mental deterioration, but again, that thing that
That
makes
makes
us
you
who we
you.
are
Yeah.
is still very much there.
Not
Yeah.
me fixing to shed a tear over Pearl, the
But
murderous granny.
it's
But
so
yeah,
true,
I
right? And
know.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think this is another reason that it makes it so so appealing that we're going to get the prequel, Pearl.
Oh yeah. Oh
Like
gosh.
I cannot wait to know more about her. And I like
Same.
Mia Goth makes that, that much more appealing as well because she's just so fantastic.
Hmm.
But there's so much that I want to know about Pearl. How did she, like, I want to see how she was also this way when she was young.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like I want to see the evolution of how she got here, but I have a pretty strong feeling that she's gonna be who she was always.
Yeah.
We're just gonna see her without all of the prosthetics on
Right.
that Mia Goth was wearing, right? But
Right.
um, and then there's this other thing happening too about aging that like the relationship between Pearl and Howard. Like when we see her getting the makeup on and then
Well, let's talk about
has
it.
she killed him yet? No. So nothing has happened yet. She's had the lemonade
Yes.
with Maxine. She
And
goes and she does her makeup
I
and then
think,
she's dancing.
right. Wasn't this, yeah, because this was after what she saw was going on, though, in the barn, right?
Well, it's like I think it's all around the same time for sure because
Because
she
I think that's
definitely
what jump started, like,
maybe.
I mean,
Yes.
got her motor running a little bit.
Could be, you're right, because there's also when Maxine's doing the sex scene, I feel like what we're seeing is Pearl's point of view. She's replacing
Yes.
Maxine with a vision of herself and
Mhm.
thinking, like I could still do that. That is still me. I still feel those ways. And I I fucking love this because I think the narrative that we're fed a lot of the time in most media is that like when you see a breakdown in a sexual relationship between mostly when we see it between a man and a woman, right? It's always that the woman is holding out and the woman doesn't want to have sex and like,
Mhm.
oh my God, she hasn't touched me in years, blah, blah, blah. And then we're seeing it in the reverse and with an age group that we never see sexual activity with like ever
Yep.
on screen.
Yeah. I okay. I don't know, but like, yes, it brings up a whole lot of very interesting points, and I think it resonates obviously with maybe to a certain age group. 20 years ago, if I had watched this, I doubt my mind would have been challenged in this way, right? And I'm not saying that I'm old or anything like that, but I mean, like, I feel like kind of the older you do get, and the more like, weird things start happening with bodies and weird shit starts going on. Like, I and I feel weird that I even talk about this for a horror flick because it's just like, why am I talking about? It's so great for them to bring up the point that even though you're maybe in your 70s and your heart's failing, you still want to get laid. I mean, but
Yeah.
it says a lot though about who we are as an inherent, like our inherent nature too, it is for all of these things that we've done in our entire life. And I think there's nothing worse. And I can relate to this on a different level, but where you feel like your body has failed you at something, right? And I feel like that's probably the theme that the older that you get, I mean, and these things start happening to what we were just saying, like this doesn't change inside, but your body is starting to unfortunately turn against you on things like that. And I mean, and it leaves you at a very weird spot. I'm not there yet, obviously, but I mean, like, it felt very realistic. I'm not going to go kill somebody if I don't get dick down,
No.
but
No, but I'm sure you've had a situation where it's like, oh, my back hurts in a way that it has never hurt
100%.
before. So what's going on there? It's not like you're,
You just
fucking
start,
done and down for the
right.
count, but yeah.
Yeah, like your body starts changing, and then you can't help but think about, things
Yeah.
like this.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean,
And
I
it's another
appreciated that.
area where, yeah, and when she's like trying to initiate some physical contact with Howard, and he says, like, my heart can't take it, it's devastating.
I know.
Like, I'm literally devastated for this woman who's a murderer because I just want her to feel that physical intimacy with the
I
man
know.
that she loves
And
because it's so natural and it's so human.
100%.
And I feel like this probably goes without saying, but I'm having like a, oh, like aha moment as we're talking about this. The movie, in some senses, is like the thing that as humans we're all the most scared of, which is getting old and dying.
Absolutely. No, I mean, honestly, also,
And like not mattering anymore because of the way that society fucking treats us.
yeah. And
Yeah.
I love the dynamic too of using, I mean, your sexuality, or like, that part of you, because you
Your
see,
desirability as well, maybe.
right. But you see that there are these really hot, you know,
Yep.
young people out there to make an adult film, right? And then you look in the mirror and you're not that.
Yeah.
There's just so many levels. That's why I say I just don't like, I don't want to, this probably sounds crazy. I don't want to cheapen this with the word slasher because it's just so
Right.
on
I know
so
what you
many
mean.
levels. You just think about, like, it just happens to be that this older lady that we're really vibing on a level with, right? Where I'm like, damn, I know. Okay, Pearl, I'm with you. And then you figure out
Yeah.
she's also gonna kill people. You're like, I mean, you wanted the finger wag at her, like, now, Pearl,
Come
knock
on,
that
Pearl.
off,
We were all
okay?
rooting for you.
We were rooting for you. No, but I mean,
Yeah.
it's a really great, it is a really great story of, yeah, just, you have young beauty, you have like there's a certain time in your life where you have that. And I don't want to, I also don't want to say that goes away, but I mean, yeah, aging is a bitch and things do change, and
Yes.
you
Like, I think
know,
there is the reality that our bodies change and can't do things in the exact same way that they used to. But, like, there's a comment from Bobby Lynn where she says, one day we'll be too old to fuck,
oh yeah,
basically. And it's like, but will you though? Or is that just what we've decided? And then we
exactly.
don't actually interrogate whether or not that's true because we've forgotten about you once you hit a certain age,
Mhm.
right? And then there is the sex scene between Pearl and Howard. And every time I watch, I have to reflect on my own feelings. And I think there's a little bit of both in how I'm feeling. I think that's fair because part of me is creeped out and scared for Maxine because we know that they're murdering people and she's caught underneath them. But also, is there a part of me that's like, I don't really want to see this because you're not hot? Like, you know what I mean?
Well,
And like,
I'll
I
tell
have to
you.
be truthful about that. So,
I mean, listen, when I'm looking up porn, I'm not here to tell you I'm not looking up grandparent porn. Okay. So,
I'm
I
not.
mean,
No, I hope
listen,
it's there for our older friends. I
I hope
really
it's there when
do,
I get
but
older, when I do reach that level.
absolutely. Yes.
No, but you're right. I mean, I also was very, this sounds bad, but I was also very scared for Howard too, where I was like, she is gonna fuck him
Yes.
to death. Like,
Right.
leave him.
Yes.
He's already told you his heart can't take it, Pearl. But I don't know.
And
Like,
she definitely loosened him up. Like, you know
was
how
she?
somebody will loosen up a pickle jar for you and then you get it open, but like she loosened up his heart for later.
Let me tell you something. She threw that thing on him like nobody's business. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she could have been right out there in that barn and she would have been like, move over, ladies. Let me show you what I've got in store.
Yeah. Oh, big time. Yes.
But I mean, I don't know. Like, but no, you're right. I mean, sure, there's a part of you where you're like, interesting choice for, yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
And I think it's normal for us to, like, again, I like the complexity in the way that Ty West,
yes.
the writer,
Mm-hmm.
producer, editor, director, whatever. I don't think he did all of those things, but he definitely wrote and directed it.
Yeah.
He makes those things so complex because you know for sure that you're nervous for Maxine, who is caught underneath them. And let's face it, like, I don't really think you want to be under the bed of kind of anybody that's having sex. Like, that's just an awkward situation.
Yeah,
But the layers that he's building in that is just so fascinating. And it does cause you to just pause and be like, wait, which part am I like creeped out by? And what's the like ratio for each of them?
I need to do a pulse check. What's scared me the most about this?
Yeah.
Is it Maxine? Is it Howard's help?
Right. Yeah.
Is it what?
Am I just being ageist? Like, what's happening?
I mean, yeah. Am I the villain? Like, yeah.
Maybe. I don't know. Yeah.
You know, also when you see like older, okay, I see this a lot in TV and sometimes like film too. And it is usually comedies, but where they do address like older people in sex, it's usually the butt of a joke. You know what I mean? So like it was in a very different tone here, and it just felt it felt very real. Like, you know, there's nothing funny, haha, about, you know, that. So
right. And I mean, I think there's a lot more. I mean, it's kind of funny to be like, well, the movie is also about sex, like, because they're making a porn, but it really is about sex and sexuality and how that changes as we age and what we think about different people having sex. And I mean, even, you know, that conversation, I love the way that they framed this too, because Lorraine is the perfect kind of gateway into a larger conversation about kind of the purpose of what they're doing there, right? Because she is so reserved and sheltered kind of from this kind of lifestyle. So that really worked as like a narrative opening, I guess. Like, rather than like, why would you guys be having this conversation if you're all on the same page? Well, bring in this girl who's not on the same page and it opens it all up, right? But fuck, where was I going with that? Lorraine. Oh, even the way of like the camera changes things.
Yep.
And it being more of like I don't want to say that it's acting, even though it is acting. Like, they were taking it very seriously in that way of like, they're making a film, this is just acting. But it was also I think touching on that thing that we hear about a lot from like the 60s and 70s of like free love, basically, or not being so tied down to the idea of monogamy and you know,
embracing
like,
their sexuality instead of keeping it like, you know, behind a closed door or whatever.
And getting rid of the shame that is around sex and sexuality. And it's like bonkers to me that is still so much a thing. Like, as again, I'm going to say Western culture because I don't know enough about different cultures to claim that it is a worldwide issue. But as a Western society, we're so fucking prudish.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And yet, like, sex is at the base of like everything. I mean, like, you literally have to have sex for us to be here. Like, it is just what it is. And we are so shameful about it, and we are so shaming towards people. And I love what this movie does to be like, why are we doing this? Why are we relegating old people to these nursing homes? And why are we saying that sex should be behind closed doors and that it's shameful if you want to do certain things? Like, why can we take a collective look at ourselves and like figure some shit out, you know?
Yeah. You know what I just thought about, and you might have this in your notes. I don't have it in mine, but I'm sitting here really thinking about Pearl, especially like with in regards to Maxine, right? But like, you have this, I mean, just sexual frustration that Pearl has, right? I mean, like, it's written out pretty clear for us. Like, also, is there like the underlying like jealousy from her? Because I don't want to say that they're, but like for her, like she gets, like, she puts the makeup on, like she wants to have that, she craves that intimacy with Howard, but then she's got these younger people, there's that, like, then they're making like an adult film in the barn, but I'm not saying that there's shame or anything, but maybe there's a jealousy or like some type of something there where she's like, oh, they're just free love, or like, they're making a porn, and I'm with a husband. Because I'm going along your thoughts of like the Western, thought mind,
Yeah. Yeah.
where I can't even, like
I
have
can't
an
even be with
intimate
my
relationship
husband.
with him, and you've got a barn full of kids out here, that aren't in a committed relationship. I don't think
For
that
sure.
I don't know if that's like a forefront, but it almost makes you wonder if that's also like somewhere. I mean, it would be pretty, actually, it would be pretty on the nose for that to outline a hypocrisy especially in the United States. And I'm sorry to say this, but especially in Texas, where like, you should not have an abortion. However, like a husband can be like violent with his wife or something. Like there's always
Right.
that hypocrisy,
Yes.
or, whatever it may be. Right. So like,
Yeah.
maybe with the preacher and all of that too, like maybe that was a small, like just underlying theme that might have been present in some way too. But
I think 100% because I think that also is present. To me, I think it's obvious that Pearl is bisexual.
yes.
Um, Although maybe I don't know, maybe she's coveting Maxine's younger body, but there's something about she also says, I don't like blondes.
Right.
And I thought that that was a pointed comment towards a female blonde,
Yes.
right? So I don't know. I thought Pearl probably bisexual. Maybe we'll learn more about that in Pearl. But I thought that that would also fit into what you were saying in terms of like based on the timing of when she grew up, she could probably never be open about that.
Right.
And it's not that we see Bobby Lynn and Maxine together, but just the fact that they are filming this kind of activity, you would maybe assume that they're more open to that kind of thing.
Sure.
And we do get that confirmation from Bobby Lynn when she says queer, straight, black, white, whatever. She
Right.
doesn't care. But yeah, I think that would definitely feed into all of that for sure. I mean, Pearl likely never got to live. We know she never got to be a dancer like she wanted to, but she probably never got to live even sexually the way that she wanted to. So,
yeah. I mean,
well, I found a note, or not a note, but a text that I had sent you. And this is probably to my earlier comment when everything with Roe v. Wade happened. I texted you, crazy thought. Pearl from X is a cautionary tale about what restricting access to reproductive health can lead to, because restricting those services also in many ways frames sex as unhealthy and evil.
100%.
I mean, the way that we go about telling people what is good sex and what is bad sex and what is okay and what is not okay and what we should be ashamed of and what we should not be ashamed of. I mean, that creates such a fucking complex for people that, that just run amok. I mean,
yes,
we're left to our own devices, which are not good because they're not educated devices. Like,
oh, I mean, 100%. And I mean, I think that listen, we can take it a step further in, our culture and today, like how we're really understanding what consent means nowadays, because there's always been just, I mean, I can even remember from when I was younger, it was like, if a boy, this is just from my experience, right? But like if a boy is paying attention to you, like there was always a muddied line of like, of when it comes to consent. You understand what I'm saying? Like now I'm hell bent on teaching my child to understand what consent means, because back when I was younger, I mean, if a guy brushed up on you, or copped a feel or whatever, you were kind of mainstreamed into being like, ugh, whatever, like boys will be boys or whatever it may be. And that's not right. So going along with what you're saying, I mean, it's reproductive health. It's understanding and having your boundaries respected and your bodily autonomy and what, safe sex and exploring yourself, and being yourself, but all that goes hand in hand. And yeah, we're taught that none of that matters or whatever. You know what I mean? Like,
right. And these people
Yeah.
making this film have a better grasp on that kind of thing than anybody in that preacher's congregation would have, right? Like, there is that
Yeah.
offhand comment that Wayne makes, like, Jackson's a professional. He doesn't have any diseases or anything, right? Which I think was a purposeful point in being like, they're not just doing this willy-nilly.
Right, right.
Like they actually understand that side of things. And it really is like it's a business, as they were saying, right? And yeah, I think that they, like I said, just have a better grasp on all of this than anybody else. I mean, clearly better than RJ, because as soon as Lorraine brings up the idea of also wanting to be in the film because she likes what she saw, she's
Yep.
not sure where she stands, but she's like opening up to this kind of thing, and like you just said, exploring her options. And maybe she realized she wants to be in front of the camera and she wants to be a star just like Maxine. And like the immediate moment that she's interested, he's
like, no.
disgusted by this
Yeah.
whole thing. He is such a hypocrite. Like,
Oh, big time.
I think there's an argument to be made that because they're in a relationship, it might have been nice if she asked him first, just because they didn't go there with that in mind. Whereas the other four people, they knew what they were getting into, right?
Yeah,
So it does
yeah.
kind of come out of left field. But like, dude, if you're gonna film this and know that all of these people are dating, but also fucking each other, like, come on now.
I know.
You know what kind of film you're here to make. No matter if you're going to be making an avant-garde, classy, dirty film, whatever.
Yes. Very high bar.
Mm-hmm. Which, like, good for you, but like,
but that's a great through line to the hypocrisy statement as well, where it's like, I mean, hello. Also, I don't know. Like, I don't know where. Okay, I know that I'm monogamous and I am married, but like, and that's the path I chose. But like, also, like, if we had a different type of relationship, I would not be like, I need to ask you to do so. I don't know. I'm very weirded out by certain things. You know what I mean? Where I'm like, but I think right now, also in my mind, I'm equating that to like, I don't need to ask you if I need to buy another book. I mean, having sex with someone else is kind of a different thing. But if you're looking at it through a business lens, though, I mean, yeah, no, he's just so hypocritical. I find it funny where my mind's going, where I'm like, I don't have to ask you, but it's like, well, no, I don't have to ask you if I need to order something off Amazon.
But I also think you're onto something with the idea of like the things that are being presented in that conversation. Like, I think what Lorraine was missing was understanding that they had this conversation beforehand and they all knew what they were getting into.
Right.
But like, Lorraine is also kind of growing up in that moment a little bit, or expanding her awareness, or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, I don't know. It's just, I guess there had to be one person that was going to be coming at it from a different angle. Like, it couldn't all be, I mean, low bar, but both Jackson and Wayne are just like actually breaths of fresh air in this movie, because they are totally for what these women are up to. They aren't trying to like make decisions for them.
Right.
I mean, almost right away, like when they're at the gas station and Wayne asks Bobby Lynn her opinion on the script, something about that really stood out to me, of just like, okay, he actually cares like what these women think, and like trusts their opinion and has respect for their opinion. And I mean, again, low bar, but in a horror movie in general, and in a horror movie about making a porn, I think it's really easy to just assume that the men are going to kind of be trash. Like,
right. Yeah.
So I loved their conversation about just like, I don't know where I stand on it, about this idea that you can choose who you love, but you can't choose who you're attracted to. I don't know. I think those things are kind of all wrapped up with each other, but I get what they're going for. And to try and explain it from that point of view of, again, like, yeah, the camera changes things. Like
Yeah.
it's a job. Yeah.
Yeah. For sure. For sure.
Yeah. Well, I'm wondering what else I maybe have.
Well, I was
Did you
gonna
have
say,
a favorite? Oh, go ahead.
oh no, were you about to say like a favorite scene or moment?
Yeah, because I brought up mine, right, with Maxine swimming being my favorite sequence, but I don't think we got yours.
Well, I'm gonna tell you, and this might seem a little odd, but it was scary and also sad in some ways at the same time. But when Pearl gets in the bed with Maxine, and
Okay.
um, so
That is a good sequence
I'm
for
going
sure.
off of like how it made me feel because obviously I was scared, but then I was also like, by the end of the movie though, and you've seen all these complexities of Pearl, right? And you're feeling like all of these ways about it where you're like, I can't believe that I've got all this empathy for like a serial killing lady, but um how incredibly lonely that she really was, you know, and like just I mean, in some ways, I think she felt like she connected to Maxine because they did have their moment, like with the lemonade and the questions about, you know, the pictures and all of that. For there to be, you know, that I'm like, she's just craving like a connection or something with someone. But it was fucking scary too, though. I mean, don't get
Ah,
me wrong. It was just the
it
way
was,
that the whole thing made me feel like so many different feelings just in one moment. You know what I mean?
yes. And again, a weird way to say that you love something, but she was like, Pearl was very much crossing a line
Oh yeah.
in what she was doing in that moment. Like, there was no consent.
No.
It was like bordering on, I mean, I don't know if assault is the right word, but
Well, it was
um,
knocking on Assault's door.
you,
Let's just
you
put it
weren't,
that way.
yeah, like yes, it was knocking pretty heavily on that
Yes.
door.
Uh-huh.
But I don't think I've ever seen that with a woman, let alone a woman Pearl's age.
I know. So
That
like
is
the
a
whole
role that is
thing. Yeah.
um typically given to men in horror
Yes.
movies or in any kind of movie. And I don't think that that's wrong because I think that more often than not we do see that with men,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But just another refreshing piece of things within this film of like, okay, it's very conflicting because it's like I do still like I think I it's the same thing with older people thinking
Right.
not maybe not less of them but not expecting certain things and then like giving women a pass on certain things because they're women and typically the narrative goes the other way but then remembering like nope everyone can be fucked up and
Uh-huh. Right.
it is so weird to say that it's refreshing but it is because you
Yeah.
don't see it so
And I mean, that's why I say like it makes me feel weird that I find these moments where I'm like, oh, really enjoyed that because it was like, yeah, there's a
yes.
clear line of like, this is not okay. But I don't know. It's just it's everything that it made me feel. And I mean
Mhm.
the film has these moments throughout the whole thing, but there was just something about that, especially reflecting on it once you get to the end, like to the end of the
Yeah.
film, right? And like just reflecting on these moments where Pearl was acting out of, you know, out of line or whatever. And you're like, shit, I mean, you know, it's,
Yeah. But I
uh,
think you nailed it with like craving that physical intimacy and that
mhm,
touch and that care
yep,
between that's just like natural for humans to want between themselves and other humans. Like,
yeah.
yeah.
Oh, such a good
There's something
movie.
else I was going to say about that. Oh, and the fact that it is Mia Goth and Mia Goth. So
Oh,
there's
right.
also just like the filmmaking, like technical aspect of it all that is just awesome. Like,
Yes.
I mean, it's just,
It's
it
so
is always
good.
cool to watch anything where you know an actor is playing multiple parts. Let me roll that back. Like, there's some stuff that's just for jokes that I don't think it's that cool to watch,
Right.
but in something more serious or more dramatic or something like this, where you're actually watching like craftsmanship in
Yes.
filmmaking, right? And like
Mhm.
for a while in the movie, I really thought, are we doing timey-wimey here? Are we getting, is that going to be the twist? Because especially when Pearl kind of replaces herself with Maxine during that sex scene, I was like, okay, what are we doing here? And
Yeah.
I mean, kind of, because it's Mia Goth and Mia Goth, but I think that was another aspect of the movie that threw you off. And for people that like watch a lot of shit like this, another reason to like not suspect or expect that it's just going to be an old woman killing people.
Yeah, 100%.
And that is enough and more than enough. Like,
yes. Yeah. Oh,
yeah,
so good.
I know, so good. I'm just gonna go over my notes, make sure
Yeah.
we hit all the points. I mean, the reveal, we've alluded to it, but the reveal that Maxine is the preacher's daughter, I thought that worked really, really well, especially because it wasn't like we didn't need like a big to do about it. Like it just was what it was. And
Right.
we hear her saying, that thing about, I will not accept a life I do not deserve or something like that. And then we hear the preacher say it at the same time. I love that idea of like reclaiming a phrase like that for yourself and for your own autonomy. But it wasn't like this big shocking thing. It was just like, oh shit, okay,
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
right. That adds another nice little layer to everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there is more, if we picked like a particular, like I'm sure we could talk a lot more about agency and autonomy and all that kind of stuff, but
Yeah, I mean, the main things I have, and we've talked about this, is just like, writing a character like Pearl, where the audience is going to sympathize with like a murderous character. It just hit a very human like aspect of life, because I
yeah.
mean, look at what you see in horror like most of the time. I mean, I guess Scream, but still there was a mask, there was still like a costume, there was still like there's all these extra things on top of it that separate, like it's a very clear boundary where you separate like, oh, okay, like, you know, it's not just so in your face without any of that stuff. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like there were no
Well,
props, there were no, I mean, it was just
yeah.
these two people in this very rural part of the country, and all this shit went down. And I mean, even to set it apart from Texas Chainsaw, I mean, it wasn't somebody that's gonna take your face and wear it. You know what I mean? Like it
Yeah.
really wasn't any of that. It was just like you're sympathetic to a purely evil character, and it's a very weird dynamic. But it's a very smart choice to write a character like that, because it really, for me, it makes me enjoy the film so much more, and it keeps it in my head, because the whole time you're thinking like, like I did not see that coming. I can't believe like this is where we're headed. And then you start to question, well, why not? Is it because it's an, older woman or whatever? So yeah. So
Yes,
good.
I think you said this before and really got to the heart of something, but there is a simplicity to what's being done here that actually in turn kind of allows it to be that much more complex and be that much more layered. Because I mean, not to say that you put on a ghost face costume and all of a sudden it's super complicated, but
Right.
I think just in like stripping things down, you're able to go to so many different places.
Yep.
And I think maybe, I don't know, maybe to wrap things up, but
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there are a lot of people that will say that this is elevated horror. We've talked about this
Yeah.
privately. I hate that
Me too.
term. I really don't like it because I think that there's something about it that says that you can't just enjoy horror for
For what
horror.
it is,
Like
I
horror has
agree.
to be this like super smart fucking like intellectual thing that you can like study in university or some shit. But like what does that even mean? It just means you're kind of a snob and you think that straight up slashers aren't really fun. And if you don't, like, that's fine. You don't have to enjoy just a straight up slasher. But this is, I think it's horror, but it's just doing something different. Like it was
Well,
horror that was interested in telling a different type of story.
exactly. And that's where I have the issue with like elevated horror, because it's all horror, I think, at a certain level is tapping into some type of fear inside of you.
Yeah.
Whatever it may be, right? Somebody that stalks young women, Halloween, or somebody that you're scared to go to sleep. I mean, that deals with nightmares and like what that does to our psyche. I mean, there's so
Yeah.
many, but
So many facets. Yeah.
right, there's something in each horror type of horror that's made that taps into a fear that somebody has. I don't like the word or the term elevated just because they're choosing to just go a different route than like a guy with fingers or knives for fingers or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, I don't subscribe to that. I subscribe to, it's a different way of storytelling. That's it. There's just choosing a different method of tapping into a fear that you have, whether it's something that's more super, super realistic and humanized like this, or something that's just taking the idea of, your nightmares can actually kill you or whatever, and creating, a movie out of that. It doesn't matter. Like at the base of it, it's still tapping into something that is scary on some level in real life.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And they're all going to hit us in different ways because as humans, we all have different levels of fear or thresholds for certain types of scares, right? But it's like there's horror films that have a bigger budget or have a person that's more interested in getting those beautiful shots than just telling a basic, quote unquote, basic story with the camera, as opposed to somebody that does want to do like the drone shots or, work with a color palette. But that's a different type of filmmaker. It's not really I guess it produces a different type of film, but it doesn't mean that one is better.
Absolutely.
Like I think it's so frustrating that we do that with horror because we don't have that. Like, we're not calling things elevated drama or elevated comedy.
I was just about to say elevated
and
superheroes.
There are
right.
like there are movies that are better than other ones, and there are movies that are like super low budget that tell the best story or have the best acting. There's something to me that's like inherently denigrating towards the genre overall by separating it into elevated and everything else. Like, why are we doing that? Let's stop doing that with the genre that we love, please.
I agree. Yeah. Now, is X going to make me, I don't know, like close my bathroom door and then open up a drawer to make sure that no one can get into my bathroom? No. And for anyone who doesn't know, that's what I did after I watched the first Halloween. I was so scared of Michael Myers that because there were no locks, I grew up in a very old house with what the doors and stuff are like skeleton keys. So we don't really lock, doors or whatever. So I would close the bathroom door when it would be time for me to like go to the bathroom or take a shower or whatever it may be. And then I would pull out the drawer from the cabinet.
Smart.
It was a total Sydney Prescott with the two doors. I was just
gonna say, it's your own Sydney Prescott situation. Yeah.
And I will never forget, like, because the doors didn't lock, you also had sometimes where like someone would open the door and you just yell and they'd close it. But my mom tried to get in and she was like, "Why do you have what
are you doing in here?"
And I didn't have the guts to tell her I was scared that Michael Myers was in the house. Okay, I say all that to say, I mean, is Pearl gonna make me like do that? Or excuse me, Pearl X, no.
Yeah.
But I mean, on a different level, is it gonna make me maybe be, but not just maybe be more realistic about like people around you, but also like understand like respect and things for, I mean, older people or whatever it may be, right? So it just depends on how it hits you. But I don't like the elevated horror thing. I feel like everything has like its place in the spectrum of horror, and one's not better than the other one. It's just where it lands on that spectrum. And
yeah.
So
yeah, and I don't think it should matter whether if a movie sticks with you, it sticks with you. It doesn't matter if it's making you run back to your bedroom and hop into bed,
Right.
or if it's a thing where, you know, you can't sleep and you're thinking about that movie and the impact that it's had on you. Both films had an impact, just in a different way.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, one makes for more conversation, but
Sure.
I don't know that that makes it better either. It just makes for more conversation. So,
It just, yeah. I mean, it's just a different way of storytelling. So,
yeah.
yeah.
I'm glad we're on the same page about that, because I think it really divides horror fans. Like,
it truly does.
I think, and I think it's because we've been not we, but like the royal we have like been shaming and shitting on horror for so long. Like, oh, it's the lesser of all the films, right? Like, it doesn't really get nominated for all the prestigious awards, and so we have to, or we don't have to, but people have found a way to make it seem more worthy. And it's like, no, it's worthy.
Yeah. I'm with
It's
you
good
100%
enough.
on that. Yeah.
And X is definitely good enough. And this was such a I mean, just one of my favorite, probably my favorite horror movie now. Like, it has not left my mind. So yeah,